Hey, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mike. Welcome to Talking Niagara this morning. And, the election's upon us, the federal election, right? Hey, it seems only a month ago we were talking about the Ontario election being upon us. Hey, it was only a month
Well,
ago.
yeah. Well, we kind of expected this. And believe me, the fact that the Liberals are a threat or possible winners of the next election, they can
Well,
they can thank Trump for making the Liberals great again.
it's an interesting thing because statistically, we have what's called a statistical blip right now. Statistically, with the Conservatives were 25 points up in the polls. There's no sudden turnaround from a thing like that in a matter of days. It doesn't happen, not normally anyway, but we seem to have some form of strange blip going on, and part of that is due, of course, to Carney, right? Because Carney's kind of a phenomenon that isn't, that is different to Polyev. And unfortunately, it has to be seen that Polyev has been found wanting because he's still stuck on that record, single issue, one, axe attacks, blip blip.
Well, the Liberals will still have Carney or no Carney. I don't think they have much hope at all, if not for Trump, who has made Liberals great again. We'll repeat that.
Yeah. All right. So Carney is running in Ottawa's Nepean riding, and apparently this is a board. This is the border riding to where Polyev is running. So it literally borders on Polyev's riding. And the Liberal MP Chandra Arya is a bit pissed.
Yeah, well, wouldn't you be? He's
Yeah.
won a bunch of elections there already, and now he's like seeing, goodbye, get out. This is a nice secure seat, so we're replacing you with Carney. That
Normally
would
somebody volunteers.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, in this particular case, I don't think he was voluntold, basically.
Yeah, I think he probably was. Although probably what has happened is typically a person like that gets a kind of, there's an award for doing so, right? Like a nomination to the Senate or something like that.
Well, he has to wait. He's going to have to wait for that nomination and to have held that seat for as long as he has, and then told to get out. He can understand it, but at the same time, he's got to be annoyed. The other aspect of it is, of course, that Carney has lived in Ottawa at different times for a long time. He claims he's raised his family there. He spent a long time in Ottawa, so it's a pretty good fit for him. Polyev himself is in and around Ottawa, and he is from out west as well. So we don't know why Carney or Polyev.
Well, I thought he might have gone for somewhere like St. Paul, where I'm pretty certain that the Liberals will win it back.
Well, the Liberals are the ones that figured out where he should be. They need a solid seat where Carney can win. I'm sure that the electorate in that Nepean riding will wholeheartedly get behind him, even though some will be annoyed that area got dumped. But I don't know.
Yeah. And just for the record, for us, by the way, Andrea Kaiser will be the Liberal candidate for Niagara Falls, Niagara on the Lake, the new riding that we've got. Basically, in the federal elections ridings, we've actually, basically Niagara Falls and Niagara on the Lake are joined together. and it's no longer Fort Erie as part of that bundle.
Well, I don't know how much of a hope she has of winning. She's a really good candidate. We've interviewed her.
Yeah, we did a few years ago, and I'm only saying this because, hey, in this area, we were talking last election, only a month or so ago, about the Liberals being in disarray when it came to their provincial candidate, but clearly not when it comes to the, to the federal candidate.
Yeah, she's run before. She's had a pretty good. She had a pretty good following. I remember when I was working at the polls, and my particular poll, when we counted the votes, she'd won in my particular poll.
Oh yeah.
But overall, she did not. So she could, at this particular time, put up a pretty good fight against Baldinelli.
Yeah. Well, at a federal level, actually at a federal level, this constituency, well, actually, it's a changed constituency riding now, with it being only Niagara on the Lake and Niagara Falls. That's set to see. We'll see how that may impact things.
Well, Niagara on the Lake are much more conservative voters.
You would expect it, yeah.
Yeah. So but they're a smaller amount. So, and Niagara Falls has been pretty much represented by conservatives for a very long time. And to upset the incumbent would take some doing. And I'm not sure that she has.
But again, we've got a lot of new people here.
Quite right, but I still think that Baldinelli is pretty safe in this riding. Remember, we do things different here in Niagara. I mean,
I know.
We have an NDP MPP, and we have a conservative MP, which couldn't be more different, really.
Yeah.
What about the NDP? I'll bring that up again. Are they even? I mean, they don't know.
I don't know whether that. I did a quick search last night. Couldn't find their candidate's name.
Well, the party in general is not tracking at all. It's almost as if they're almost committing political suicide to make sure that they don't draw votes away from the Liberals. The Liberals couldn't be more happy about the NDP being so far down the list, and that is a consequence, of course, of Singh hitching his wagon to Trudeau for so long. That he doesn't really have a whole lot of currency now. He's really got to come up with something.
I've seen a report that he might even lose his own seat.
Well, the NDP are in trouble everywhere.
Yeah,
and I believe that Singh. This is the last time Singh will be running at all. He won't be the leader after this because of the NDP will be completely vanquished. They're going to have to get a new leader. And if they don't, they're going to be just that party that's nearly inconsequential. They were consequential when they supported the Liberals for so long, but now that's come back to bite them. And we'll see what Singh and the NDP come up with, but they better get moving.
Well, talking about that, okay, so if there is a minority government, whether it be minority Liberal or minority Conservatives, which seems to be the current bets, who would either party, court as their partner, so to speak?
Well, it's very unlikely that the Conservatives will court the NDP. The Liberals probably will. Whether or not they'll have, if the Conservatives win a minority, will the NDP and the Liberals join together in a co-party, basically a coalition? That really doesn't feel too good to the average Canadian to have a coalition like that. If a party wins, they should be the governing party. That's the way we see things over here. I don't know what'll happen, basically, but right now, because of Trump, it's adding fuel to the Liberal boiler, basically, they're getting up a lot of steam because of what's happening in the U.S. and their aggressive trade policies, and they're terrifying us. As I was listening to one commentator, and he referred to U.S. as terrifying Canada, as in terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. I get the joke. All right. One of the things that is being said about this federal election is that they're expecting US election interference.
Yeah.
We've already had Chinese, we've already had Indian. Now we're talking about US interference.
Well, you got guys like Bannon and other people who peddle misinformation, and we've already found out that the Russians and so on have already been meddling in places like Alberta, and there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of pretend sort of commentators that are endorsing the conservatives or whatever. They are. We can expect a lot of social media BS. Are we ready for that? Can we sort out what's the wheat from the chaff in the media? Then the U.S. is going to do the same thing apparently, but they only got 30 days to do it. But I imagine a lot of very vulgar, crass, and a lot of misinformation coming from somewhere, wherever it comes from, and it will maybe even China, and to make a big mess of the Canadian election. So we as electorate have to sort of be able to just ignore social media as best we can and try to pick and choose the articles or the opinions or whatever and judge on our own in a very objective way. That's hard to do with how misinformation is played out there.
Yeah.
It usually tries to dig into your emotions or amplify things that aren't true for a purpose. So this could be a test case, but the one advantage is it's only 30 days long. So it's not like the U.S. election where you got 2 years.
Yeah. And it's not like a planned election. You see, that's the thing about, with an election coming at the normal time. If we'd have had an election in October, there's plenty of time to actually done something like this, right? Because, the election would have plodded on and built up to an October election, and it would have been, relative. We knew what the timetable was. Whereas right now we've got 28 days or 36 days, 35 right now. So the timetable is tight. The timetable doesn't allow for much interference unless the interference has already occurred.
Yeah, I think though that the average electorate at this stage of the game is still unprepared for the kind of election interference and misinformation that will wave into our election coming up.
Well, undoubtedly,
because we have not lived with it long enough to build up a tolerance for it.
Yeah,
we haven't been experiencing it long enough to build up a tolerance for it.
The way I see that this can happen is all of a sudden you'll find either pro-Polyev, US supported pro-Polyev statements coming down, or US anti-Carney statements coming down.
The U.S. is more interested in splitting up the Canada right now. They'll probably do things in Alberta and Saskatchewan where the very strong, where they expect that more Trump-leaning type of electorate might be there. Yeah. So they're trying to push for that. I think the general consensus now, or one opinion I've watched a couple or read a couple, and more than once I come across this idea that the U.S. would want to fracture Canada in pieces, appeal to Alberta and Saskatchewan because they have resources that they want, particularly oil, and then try to try to entice places like Alberta, Saskatchewan to have a strong conservative following, and plus have a lot of resources they want, including oil and uranium. Saskatchewan has the largest uranium deposits in the world, and that they're going to be important to the U.S. So it's divide and conquer, basically, what will more likely be their long-term plan. And they might start that in this election by trying to meddle with the electorate in Alberta and Saskatchewan and try to point them basically that, you know, you can join up with the U.S. It'd be wonderful for you. You'll be happy, happy, happy. All your dreams will come true.
Yeah, but will it cause a split? I'm not so sure it will, but yeah, I get where you're coming from in terms of that, right?
Now, Mike says we should never have a majority government.
Yeah.
You know what? If we do have a minority government, I would hope that both sides of the aisle will cooperate in the strongest terms, come to an agreement.
Well, that's why I said that as we stand right now, it is unlikely that the NDP will be strong enough to support to provide support for the Liberals, and you know, basically, I don't see NDP certainly isn't going to support the Conservatives. Who would the Conservatives ally with?
Maybe the Bloc. I don't know.
Bloc seems to be the obvious question, because I consider Bloc to be Quebec Conservative, but I might be wrong on that one. I'm always confused by what Bloc do.
Well, the Bloc, the Quebec is even more afraid of what's going to happen, because Quebec relies incredibly on the wealth of the rest of Canada to feed it money. It also has a culture that it has to preserve. If Canada becomes part of the United States, then Quebec is going to be in big trouble, because they will never be able to hold off the sort of infusion of Americanisms into Quebec. They might lose a large part of the culture there. There's a whole lot of
Again, Mike says our goal should be to make Bloc Québécois the weakest party in the House, but they're not going to be. Right? They're going to maintain their hold over the Quebec ridings.
Yeah, and I also like to remind everyone that, like I said before, like Quebec has the most interest of all to remain out of the United States. It has the most fear of becoming incorporated in the United States, and the most fear of its economy being disrupted by the United States. Now we find here suddenly all the Liberal Party sort of ideas of environment and all that have gone out the window. Carney's taking all the conservative points. We're going to build infrastructure. We're going to build pipelines. We're going to open up mines. Like, we're going to do it real quick. We're going to do interprovincial trade. We're going to get on that really quick. That's completely opposite of what the Liberals have done in the past, where they've interrupted and withheld all these developments upon Indigenous claims and environmental claims, and they have not been able to fully, in the interest of carbon in the air, have really been a bump in the road when it comes to developing our resources. We are resource rich. That is why the United States wants us. The United States imports most of its essential resources and minerals, and we have all of them, most of them, right here.
And that's again why they want Greenland.
That's one of the aspects too. Why they want Greenland, because of the rare earth minerals there. They're in a case they're planning for AI too. All these minerals and all these things that we're talking about, and power generation. when AI kicks in, and AI will be the dominating factor technologically going forward, and AI needs an incredible amount of power. And that those countries that can produce the power and have the minerals to build the things they need, like cobalt and tungsten and all these other nickel and all these other rare earth minerals, plus uranium for developing power. You have Saskatchewan with the largest uranium reserves. We give half of our nickel to the United States, aluminum, and not that's not including the rare earth minerals, which you have abundant amount of. So when the United States sees that they're importing most of those, and they see that we have most of them in abundance, that is, they're looking at becoming the dominant force in which to be able to plan ahead for an AI future, which means minerals and power. And Quebec produces incredible amounts of power, and there's incredible amounts of uranium, which is the next source of most of the power that's going to come. So we are that I think is all part of what the United States is doing right now. They're becoming imperialistic, and I think what they're doing basically behind the scenes, they're saying, "Look, you take Taiwan, and we won't say anything, and we'll take Canada, and you don't say anything."
All right. Okay, so the Haskell Free Library and Opera House in Stanstead, Quebec, has become a point of border tension. Those Canadian residents there want to keep it open to Canada, and the US wants to tighten access to this border straddling library and concert hall.
Yeah, it's very sad. The front door of it is in Vermont, so what people in Quebec have to do is walk into Vermont and then walk into the library, basically like that. And the U.S. has said there's been problems of illegals doing that, which is a common thing. And unfortunately, this is the new world we're facing, that we cannot do these polite things that we did before, where we could just walk into the United States and walk into the library that serves the community on both sides of the border.
Yeah.
And so they're saying they're not going to let that happen. And anybody who wants to go to the library will now have to go to the border control and come through the border control and then over to the library, which was you'd think they'd be able to set up a kind of a special zone there, wouldn't you?
You think they would? Because I would think that if, in order to get into the library, which is on the border, my thinking is that you would have to go into some form of US control on the Canadian side, and or Canadian control on the American side, or whichever way you want to put it. But before the entrance, you would actually have US, some form of border control there. The only people who would get through the border control would be those who are full-time workers for the library.
I think probably the best solution would be put a door on the Canadian side so you can get in there, and they can have border officials or wherever you need there to make sure that they just don't keep going out the front door. Yeah. So the back door will be in Canada, the front door will be in the US.
Yeah.
And the library is open to anybody, and that
if you try and go out the door, that you don't have rights to, you'll be turned back.
Yeah. Now this is a lot of these things are left over from when the border was in dispute for many, many years. Little bits of the border were in dispute. Does it go this far? Does it go that far? Whatever. So it took a long time to establish those borders. And
this was always built in 1904. This was built in 1904, so probably would be one of Trump's. Yeah, the border doesn't really go there; it goes here.
Yeah. So, well, the artificial line, that border is an artificial line. Well, tell me what border is not an artificial line?
Exactly. You could go anywhere in the world and you could look at the border, and you'll find homes that actually have land, where the house is on one side of the border, and let's say a farm is split into across the border on, between France and Germany, it happens, guaranteed.
Oh, sure. There's all little pockets here and there.
Yeah.
We have, as a matter of fact, I think it's a bit of Andorra is completely surrounded by Spain. There's a little part of Andorra that I think it's Andorra or Spain or something like that. A little part of Spain that's completely surrounded by France or something like that. Just a little pocket. And
well, in fact, actually, you were right upon that one. And there was actually a time a few years ago when the Tour de France went right through that pocket. So it went into Spain and out of Spain in like 20 minutes.
Yeah, there's a little sort of pocket of Spain inside France, or the other way around. I can't really remember exactly how it works, but yeah, there are all kinds of places like that, and of course, all borders are artificial lines, including every one of the 50 states and every one of the 10 provinces. And
except nobody really cares if you exist on one side, if you exist on both sides of the province.
Well, look at the Republic of Madawaska between the border of Maine and, I brought this up before, there's a place called the Republic of Madawaska in Maine and New Brunswick, which was a disputed territory, and the line ended up going right through the middle of it. But the people of in and around that area on the New Brunswick side and the Maine side don't like it, so they call themselves the Republic of Madawaska, and they feel themselves an independent country within two other countries. So the people in and around Madawaska are pretty good with one another. They are on both sides of the border, but they don't really think of that border as affecting them as a society, as a community.
Yeah. Well, okay, so then Canadians are trolling President Trump with a "Know Your Parasites" sign. I've seen this one on Facebook. I've seen it as a sign. I've seen it as just the sign itself. I've seen where it was in relation to the picture they've got in this article, and I've seen it as a T-shirt.
Yeah, well, it's maybe that's a good way of trolling Trump. Get to his ego, make him flare out, make his nostrils flare.
See, it talks about know your parasites. It says dog tick, deer tick, lunatic. And I'm not commenting. I'm just reading the thing as it stands, and make of it as you will.
Yeah. I think the liberal part of the liberal campaign will be continuing those kind of signs to make sure that everybody knows Trump is anywhere under their bed like a flea, and that's why and then maybe put Poilievre's picture underneath too, and they might campaign that way as Poilievre being Trump light. But I don't know. It's amusing, and I don't know. It shows Canada getting together. But I'll tell you something. I was at a lacrosse game in Buffalo on Friday, and a couple of weeks before that, I was at a Sabres game. And when we had the anthems in the Sabres game, there was a little bit of catcalling from the U.S. on the Canadian anthem, but not much. And most people were polite, and they sang their tune. But the lacrosse game, it was a pretty full crowd there of bandits. And the Canadian anthem, there was quite a bit of silence. And so the Canadians sang their song. But when the Americans had their turn, they really belted it out really, really loud and cheered and just cheered right to the rafters as the anthem was being played. And I'm always amused that they don't even know that it's a British drinking song they're singing.
That of course is was part of the deal in 1786 or whenever it was.
Well, no, they put the the song was a drinking song for a club that would get together and sing and drink, a drinking singing club, and so they composed a fairly difficult piece of music to sing for a common person, and sees how and to determine how much you could drink and still belt out that tune.
Yeah.
It was Uncaron. I always forget the name because it's a hard one to remember. It's an homage to Uncaron, I think, is the Greek philosopher that believed in drinking.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know the song. I don't know the song in question, but I understood that quite some time ago. Yeah, in fact, very few tunes like that are actually independent on their own anyway. All right.
Yeah, it's let me see here. Star Spangled Banner. Yeah, British poem written and put to a British drinking song, which was popular in the States and the ports. The tune was Anacreonic Society, which is so the song is to Anacreon in heaven. So it's an homage to this Greek philosopher that believed was good, a good fella to have, that you should be drinking and having fun, basically. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a fun song, and they decided they would the poem that Francis Key Scott came up with was then put to that music, which was a popular melody that was used for other things as well.
Yeah. Okay. Any comments? No. Carney aims to have free trade in Canada by Canada Day.
That's rather ambitious, don't you think?
Well, especially since he'd have to get elected first.
Yeah.
But I think both sides of the House want free trade.
Yeah, I doubt that they'd get much resistance from anyone there because suddenly it seems to be the way to go. Like what bothers me the most here is this was always shelved and put on the back burner over and over and over again because everyone was just kind of happy to protect their own little industries from other provinces while they had this big trading partner to the south. Now we see that we could get over $200 billion worth of wealth just by interprovincial trade. Now we're looking for other trading partners, and we don't even have trading partners within our own country.
Yeah.
It seems to be the effort going that the Nova Scotia, Ontario, maybe BC have already started to reduce their tariffs. Quebec is good for it, like they haven't been before. They're good with pipelines coming through. They're good with mines opening up and whatever else. So you have a complete shift. Now that we have this huge necessity, then we are finally doing the interprovincial trade. So I don't know. I don't think it's too little too late, but we should have done this many years ago.
Yeah. Just as an aside, by the way, going back to the election, do you think that Trudeau will stand?
No, I don't think he will.
Yeah. No, neither do I.
No, because as soon as he gets back into, if he gets back into government, then the sort of anger of that the Conservatives were able to motivate against him will just come right back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Carney will have to fight off the idea that Trudeau is actually in the back, running things.
Back benches, yeah. That he's pulling the purse strings. Yeah, absolutely.
The best thing for Trudeau is just to leave politics for the next 5 years at least. Go on the lecture tour, get onto boards of director, write his books, that kind of thing. Because right now he taints the Liberal Party, and
Absolutely, he does. Yeah,
and
I'm
he,
just
yeah.
yeah. I haven't heard anything, but I'm assuming that he will step down overall, and he won't even restand.
I think he probably, if I was him, I would just kind of enjoy life right now. Be
Yeah,
a, I mean, he's
and
been living
probably
pressure life for 9 years, nearly 10 years now. You know,
and
get back.
probably in,
Yeah, go ahead.
and probably in 5 to 10 years he'll be promoted to the Senate.
Yeah, he might get a job as a senator. He might get one as an ambassador.
Yeah,
I think
either one.
hardly though. I think he'll probably go on book tours, lecture tours, like every other politician does, and uh, you'll see him on TV being a political analyst or something like that. He probably will work with the Liberal Party, but he has to keep his distance for the next 5 or 6 years at least.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
then when everybody's stopped being mad at him, he can come back, just like Mulroney or whatever else. Like Mulroney was, in the end, Mulroney got beat badly and was roundly disliked. But when his legacy then was determined, he was thought to be a very good prime minister when all things came into focus later on.
Yeah.
So Trudeau's best action here is just to stay out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. We've got time for this one. An article I put up to you yesterday, which comes from the Tyee, which says democracy is under siege globally, and Canada is being tested right now.
Now, this article goes way back, doesn't it? It goes over a year back, I think.
Yeah, it's 5th of April. It is a year back. Yeah.
Which is very, very interesting because it kind of foreshadows what's happening now.
I didn't notice that. I didn't notice about the date on it. Sorry, but that's fine. Yeah.
But it kind of the reason I thought you put this here because it kind of foreshadows what's happening now. It's an article that's a year old, nearly a year old, which shows the push towards authoritarianism, a push towards the right, and
well, it's the push towards authoritarianism which is bothering me greatly. And remember, authoritarianism has multiple shades of color on it, right? It. I don't believe in a pure left right kind of thing in politics. I believe we've got authoritarian to kind of to freedom as another dimension. We have numbers of dimensions and multiple axes of, on the political spectrum.
yeah, it's kind of interesting how they defined Trump back then a year ago, and it takes on Modi in the article. It takes on Modi, takes on Orban in Hungary.
Yeah.
If he wanted to, I haven't read the article thoroughly. I have to confess that, but I did read some of it, and it kind of follows like that nationalism kind of thing is a thing. We find this as Erdogan. Erdogan has kind of dismantled the sort of the embryonic democracy that was trying to take a foot in Turkey. We see that any attempts at democracy in Russia have been completely crushed over the years. China doesn't even believe in it, but we find this populist.
China doesn't even pretend, right? Yeah. Let's be honest, China doesn't even pretend.
So we find these populist, right-wing populists gaining power everywhere. We found that in the German election recently, we find the rising of Le Pen. The only populist that seems to have been relatively successful is Meloni in Italy, who seems to have a populist side and a practical side. We'll see how that works out in the long run. But it says here about Trump, like Hindu nationalism in India, white nationalism is a raising factor in U.S. politics, accelerating a shift to the right. Hot button racial and gender equality issues viewed as threat to power and status of the white Christian majority. Now, I would have to really worry about how that is stated.
I worry about that statement because, in fact, when it came down to the election last November, there was almost, there was a largely male-female split within the electorate, and males almost exclusively voted Trump, even black males.
Well, black males, there has been an increase in black support. No, it hasn't been an exclusive. The Democrats still won the black vote. The Democrats still won the Hispanic vote. What was the problem is a certain amount of that shifted towards
The
Republicans, and that percentage made the difference in some areas. So
But
it's
in
still
many,
like 30% of the black male or 30% of Latino. But with Latinos, they tend to vote religion, and the idea of abortion and religious values was something that attracted them to Trump. But this paragraph is more to the point. As a result, a growing number of Americans are comfortable with authoritarian figures like Donald Trump, who promise to preserve their values. These Trump supporters are encouraged to feel threatened, and the righteous violence is condoned in the name of Christian values. That Christian value thing has been brought up over and over again in the Republicans, and the idea that the Dems have allowed the values to corrode by supporting things like 2LGBTQ and all kinds of other, as they claim, woke areas of society. So obviously, the average American feels their values have been threatened, or at least that's how the Republicans were able to get as much support as they can, because they made people feel as if their culture was eroding.
Yeah, the interesting thing is about this is that in the middle of what you were saying there about Christian values, I see a sign there that's on there is God, guns, and Trump. And here's the interesting thing is that I'm not Christian, brought up as an atheist, but one of the overriding things that I remember as, I take as Christian values is the turn the other cheek syndrome. They slap you on one cheek, turn the other cheek, invite them to do it on the other cheek.
Well, the Christian nationalists in the United States are more Old Testament types. They bring up Old Testament values more than anything, and which is more like we strike you. If you look at the Old Testament, you see what Joshua did and murdered everybody on his way to taking on what is now Israel, basically. And it says here, now this is very, very good, though. This is a comment here, very good. It says, this is 1 year old, don't forget. So it's well before the election. Despite his massive legal problems, the Trump cult has not gone away. If anything, the allegiance between conservative Christian nationalists and the Trump MAGA Republican Party is more entrenched than ever.
Yes.
That was very good. Right-wing U.S. Christian nonprofits like Alliance Defending Freedom, ADF, fund fringe groups across America, which then go after women's rights to abortion and rights on LGBT plus minorities. Banning books is another signature activity of these groups. In effect, they are forcing dangerous, unpopular agenda on Americans, as Kyle Herrig of the political funding watchdog group Accountable USA has asserted. So basically they've taken the fringe groups and demonized them.
And the interesting thing this points out, interesting again, as you pointed out a year ago, the success of AfD in Germany is, of course, been in the former Soviet part of Germany.
Yeah, mostly there. Mostly in the that's where they get most of their support.
Yeah.
And that is the area of Germany that is still struggling, because when East Germany became incorporated with West Germany, it was miles and miles and miles behind West Germany.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It still hasn't caught up. And that is
And
the area.
it also had a large number of emigres when they first remerged the two countries. A lot of the youth just left East Germany, except for Berlin.
Also, too, they have more and more problems with violent immigrants, like Islamists and so on. I think we had 2 incidences recently in Germany, which is igniting the fuel of the right.
Yeah.
So the Angela Merkel's policy of bringing in 1 million Syrians was not such a good idea, because they did not blend too well into German society. Even if they weren't violent and just basically good people, they haven't been able to blend well into German society, and they are a tax on a strain on the German economy, because you have to support them until they can be incorporated
Yeah.
into German society. So yeah, so the right know how to focus on this, and it is my experience in union politics or any other politics that once people get in through a democratic process, then they do not really have much respect for democracy thereafter. They have an idea what has to be done, so they know how to manipulate the electorate, and do what they think has to be done rather than what the electorate want.
I think it's one of the problems is that the political movement called popularism or popularism anyway,
Yeah,
is actually a movement that really breeds dumbness, right? It doesn't breed into any form of intellectual thinking. It doesn't breed any kind of, hey, we're thinking about about a political outcome. Whether you like it or not, communism was actually a thought out thought out process, right? Marx sat down, he thought about it, he suggested this would be what we should be looking at, right? And not suggesting that but it is actually based upon a theory, right? Conservatism, as we know it, is based upon a theory. Liberalism is based upon a theory. So when you have no theory, which you have in popularism, you're basically just grasping onto, oh, the sun is shining, therefore I'm putting policies about sunshine. Dave? That's one of the problems about populism. Hey, Dave. Oh, there you go. There you go. Yeah, so I was saying one of the theories about popularism is the fact that it doesn't
populism,
have a theory.
not popularism, populism.
Populism, yeah, that's the word I was trying to get to, but it wasn't coming out. Thank you. It's a political movement, and it's happened on the left and on the right, and it's devoid of theory.
Yeah, populism is it's kind of like jingoism too. Another word for it is jingoism, kind of. That we're right. We may make mistakes along the way, but we're right. We are absolutely right, and we have to just be right, just because we are who we are. We're Americans or we're Canadians, and we're right. We're right, all the way, and we're fed up with anybody telling us we're wrong, or we're fed up with all this baloney. We're right, and we've got God on our side, or we've got might on our side, whatever. That's very popular. It's very popular. Like I said, when I saw the anthem being sung in the lacrosse game, how everybody was all just buoyed up and cheering, and
Yeah.
there was all this super nationalism being, and that kind of frightened me because, in a way, yeah, I've never, of all the anthems I've ever seen sung, that was the most enthusiastic, whether it was at a lacrosse game or a hockey game or any other place. I've never seen it like that, where
But
you have this huge kind of zest in the singing of the anthem, which tells me there's this unbridled patriotism connected to the current administration.
yeah,
Which,
and
if
sometimes
it was at any other time, then this sort of Project 2025 administration, basically, I would I would have thought that was good, but the fact that I felt that it was tied to the American administration was kind of
I think unbridled patriotism like that is sometimes a bad thing.
it
And a lot
depends
of
on how it is. If you're at the Olympics and your teams are winning well and you sing the song with complete joy because it's because of the accomplishments, the athletic accomplishments of your citizens or
well, that was one of the exceptions I was going to give out. I get it because your team did well. You got 15 gold medals when in sports you never expected.
So we're watching a lacrosse game where most of the players are Canadian, and at least half the people in that arena are Canadian, and that was so zestful and powerful type of thing. And to me, it was like we are the best kind of. They were polite during the Canadian anthem, but they were going to make sure that they were way better, and they were,
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I'm not sure I like the idea of playing anthems before games.
It's been a tradition for a very long time.
I know it, but it's, for example, in soccer, it's not it's never been a tradition. You don't play the British national anthem before a Premier League game.
We used to sing the anthem in our Kiwanis before our Kiwanis meetings. We don't do it now, but we just stopped that a couple of years ago. And that's because none of us could. The idea was none of us could sing, and we're doing quite a bad job on it.
You were butchering it, so
yeah,
so better not have it than butcher it. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, we used to put the flag up. We don't do that anymore. Well, a lot of our equipment is spread around though, but we would put up the flag, the Canadian flag, and we would sing the anthem before the meeting.
All right. Okay. So, it's interesting that article, as you said, it was a year old. I didn't realize it was a year old, but still. Okay. So, moving on to our last article of the day, 50,000 killed in Gaza since the Israeli offensive began. I didn't get it. This is not the new offensive, but the original offensive way back when, right?
I think it's combined. I think it the official Hamas run ministry says that there's 50,000. The in wars past between the 4 or 5 wars that they've had prior to this, the IDF's numbers and the Hamas ministry numbers are very close. So the IDF has never really disputed the Hamas ministry numbers in the past. They are doing it now because it's really a lightning rod. They've really, even the Trump administration says that the grounds there are completely destroyed, and that's why the people have to leave. It's a place where nobody can live. Well, that war has reignited again, and Israel has been bombing like crazy. I think they've killed 1,000 people recently.
And they've said 39 deaths in the last 24 hours, 24 hours being, of course, when they wrote the article.
Yeah, they're coming down, and they know they're not going to get any resistance from Trump. And so they reignited the war, and they've killed a whole lot of more people. And of course, the innocents are the ones in the way. And Hamas and Israel says, well, we can't help that because Hamas is hiding behind them. And Hamas is saying, well, you're just killing anybody you want. You even killed those UN people over there in that building where nobody in Hamas is. So, and there is the idea of unexploded ordnance. One of Trump's spokesmen said there was 30,000 unexploded ordnance. What he got wrong there was 30 to 40,000 ordnance have been dropped, according to the IDF, on Gaza, and 6,000 to 9,000 of them haven't gone off. So I don't know those numbers are too accurate either. That's because that was being an excuse to get rid of the population so they could defuse these bombs.
Yeah. And I think what you're finding here is probably with the ceasefire and everything, during the period of the ceasefire and everything, people were trying to kind of re-find their homes, right? Albeit that it might now be a plot in the desert where nothing exists.
Well, a pile of rubble, more likely.
Yeah.
Exactly. Pile of rubble in Gaza City. That's where I used to live.
Yeah. But it's something about kind of this point here was my home.
Yeah. This was my neighborhood. This was my home. This is where I grew up. This is where my family was.
Yeah.
Well, we find now that 2.1% of Gaza has been killed. That means there's been another 3% who have been ungodly maimed or wounded in this. Major wounds, and there are probably hosts of minor wounds, and we don't know how many bodies are in the rubble too. So when the Israelis and the US say, oh, well, maybe these are inflated figures, well, they're not really. Everybody knows that. The UN knows it, the Red Cross knows it, the Red Crescent knows it. Everybody that's there knows that the body count is probably much more than 50,000.
Yeah, and there's probably 150,000 missing right now.
We don't know that. It's a massive confusion. And basically the Israelis don't want you to know because they're not letting any journalists in there. Even during the ceasefire, which existed up until recently, they never allowed foreign journalists into there. They didn't let them in. And Israel's taking advantage of the Trump regime. They've just appropriated a bunch of land in the West Bank again, and officially announced that they're ceding that land. That now that land belongs to settlers. That whole so you can see the frustration of the Palestinians, especially the ones on the West Bank who made a peace deal and recognized Israel, and they were supposed to recognize Palestine on the West Bank. They had no intention of doing that at all. They just keep eating up more and more of their territory and making life more and more difficult for the Palestinians, with the clear intent of pushing them out and keeping them out. That is without doubt. So the Palestinians being completely ripped off in this. They had to pay for the crimes of the Europeans when European Jews needed a place to go because of the massive amount of persecution they faced, particularly in the Second World War. It's the Palestinians that had to pay. They're the ones that were pushed off their land so that Israel could have Jews could have a homeland of their own, which is very analogous to how we pushed the North American Indians off their land and cheated them out of their land, and then saying, well, there's we're going to put you on this reserve. You can go there.
Yep. All right. Dave?
I'm here again.
Yep. That was a blip. That was a funny blip. Yeah. Okay. Yep. You're on for tomorrow is what Gary's asking.
Yes, I am. Gary, I'm on for tomorrow. I can nearly taste the wings now. What time? About 1 o'clock again?
Probably that's about your normal time, isn't it?
Yeah. Something tells me I got something going on Tuesday,
Well,
but
check
it's,
it out.
it's either in the morning or in the afternoon.
Yeah, check it out and tell
Oh
Gary.
yeah. In the morning I'll be taking someone to the bank. So I would say 1 o'clock. That will give me lots of time to do the stuff I have to do in the morning. So 1 o'clock, Gary, how's that?
Yeah, shots and Paul. One is good. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna shoot some pool. Yeah, I gotta get these arthritic hands kind of moving, and God, my eyesight's not good, so I might bring a pair of binoculars to sight the
Yeah,
ball.
we knew you meant shoot some pool, Gary. That's fine.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So I think we can kind of call it quits at that particular point. We've been across the world and back, haven't we?
Yes. Well, it's always good to be very clear on what's happening around the world. A friend of mine in the United States, well, a couple of friends of mine in the States who have been Canadians, who have dual citizenships, are appalled by the level of ignorance of their friends. They don't know anything about the world. In fact, one of my friends who has kids in the States couldn't believe they're fairly well educated in all things, but they don't know anything about the world. They don't know different places in the world. Like I got a very good, well-rounded education in public school. I knew all the continents. I knew lots of the countries. I knew the oceans and everything. When you go to the States, you find that there's a profound ignorance of anywhere else in the world.
I know. I noticed. I saw one thing, a video of somebody doing geography in a US thing, and they were showing the the state the state shapes, and they were having the kids guess the shape.
Yeah, and that's good. But you also, like when I was in public school, we knew a lot of the American states, but I don't think the American kids have ever learned anything about Canadian provinces.
Yeah,
I think
or
they're
even what Europe looks like.
yeah, they're very, very egocentric there, and they're inwardly looking. They're wonderful people, of course, but that has to change.
Yeah,
So anyway,
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. And honestly, there was some people, there was some. Yeah, anyway, I'm not gonna even mention it. Not gonna mention it. All right. So
well, also I have to say that anyone I've talked to in the States, well, I've talked to, they're not talking about this Canada US thing at all. They don't even seem to know much about it. Where it's got us twisted in knots. If you go into the States, nobody seems to know anything about it or talk about it or care much about it at all at this
yeah,
particular point.
yeah, absolutely. All right. So I think it's time to say goodbye.
Okay. Without further ado, I bid you adieu. Pray for peace, especially in Gaza.
Yeah. Thanks.